Hello everyone and welcome to Lab 6. This week we'll be looking at file and printer services. So in this lab we're going to be looking at setting up shared folders, assigning permissions, and dealing with installing and sharing out print devices. So again, there's a number of exercises in this lab, although most of them are quite short. We'll go ahead and get started by going through them. Exercise 1 has us just walk through assigning permissions. So we're going to start off by just creating a new global group in Active Directory called Managers. We'll add an AD account as a member of the Managers group. And then we'll create a folder on the C drive called Data. And within that we'll create another folder called Managers. And then we'll assign permissions to the Managers group on that directory. All right, so let's jump over to the VM and get started. Okay, so to create a new group, we'll go into Active Directory Users and Groups. That's in Administrative Tools, up here at the top, Users and Computers. All right, if we right-click on Users, we can create a new, and we want to create a group. Let's call this group Managers. We'll have it be global. And then by default, leave this alone, will be a security group. Distribution groups are only used for Exchange server to send out like a mail distribution list. Okay, once we have that, let's go ahead and add ourselves to this group. Awesome, so now we're the only member of the Managers group. Now what we need to do is go ahead and create a folder on the C drive. So we'll call that data, and within the data folder we'll have a managers directory. Now to assign permissions to the managers directory, we want to right click on it and go to properties. Under properties we can click on the security tab. And then from here, what we want to do is go ahead and add the managers group. We can see that some groups by default already have permissions, like the owner, the system, administrators. Typically, they will have full permissions here, as we see in gray. Users typically by default only have read and execute, list the folder contents, and read. So if we want to add another group or user up here, we need to click Edit and then Add. We want to search for the Managers group. Okay, so it found that. We can tell because it's underlined. And if we click OK here, we can go ahead and assign the permissions for the Managers group. Looking back at the lab document, what we wanted to assign was Modify, Read and Execute, List Folder Contents, Read, and write. So basically everything but full control. Click Apply and OK here. We'll see that Managers has been added, and we also have the permissions listed. So we can click OK. Alright, so we've added our account to this Managers group that's been added for the permissions of the Managers folder. We should be able to come in here and create files. So let's just test that out. We'll create a little text file here. We'll call it my file. It created, so that means we are able to write. We can also come in here and just write something in this file and save it, and we got no permission errors. Now just to show you what would happen if a user tried to enter this folder or make a write when they didn't have permissions, we can come back in and explicitly add our account. Okay, so I'll search for my AD account here. Been added, and let's deny read and execute, list folder contents, and read. And Windows lets us know that deny permissions take precedence over allow entries. So what that means is, since I'm a member of managers and I'm a member of administrators, even though both of these groups have allow permissions, I've been explicitly denied now by adding this entry. And that entry is going to take precedence over the allow ones. Okay, so I'm effectively locking myself out of this folder. Alright, so now if I wanted to come in here double click on it, we see that you don't currently have permissions to access this folder. Now, of course, I'm an administrator. I can still go in. It looks like that denies me, but I can come back in since I'm an administrator, look at the security, and just delete myself from here. And now I'm able to come back in and read and write to these files. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is share that folder. So we can share folders, and then they'll be accessible to other machines on our network that are joined in Active Directory. So to share the folder, what we're going to do is share it out. We'll look at the sharing permissions. We'll talk a little bit about the NTFS permissions. And then we'll look at how we can access that from a different machine. So what we need to do is go back to the managers folder. We know this on our C drive here, inside data. Right click on this and go to properties. You may have noticed before right beside the security tab is a sharing tab. So if we want to share this, we can click the share button. Actually, let's go through advanced sharing. So click this checkbox to share, managers. Let's look at the permissions. So for everyone, this is another level of permissions, and these permissions only apply when we're accessing this folder remotely. So one of the, I guess, best practices is to go ahead and give everyone full control. This doesn't really give full control. What this does is give full sharing control. Okay, once the user gets through these permissions, the NTFS or the security permissions still apply. So the user is going to have to be in one of these groups or one of the users explicitly listed here in this window in order to have permissions to access and read and execute, list and read, or write to the folder. Alright, so let's test this out. So we've shared this, we've shared it as managers. Let us go into Active Directory users and computers. Earlier I added another user, Ned Flanders. So Ned Flanders here, he is a member of, let's make him a member of that managers group. Okay, so click apply. Then let's jump over to another VM. So log on as another user here, Ned. While that's logging on, it may take a moment because I believe it is the first login. Let's come back over here and go to computer management. I just want to show you guys how you can look at all of your shared folders that are currently shared out. Okay, so in here, you'll see under System Tools, there's a Shared Folders node. If we expand that, we can look at the shares, and we can see the manager share. Now notice also there's some other shares here that have $ at the end. These shares are called hidden shares. Anything with a $, it's not going to appear in the list of available shares from a remote user. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Let's jump back over. Okay, now that that's loaded up, what we can do is just open up a folder. And then from there in the address bar, we'll type in the UNC path to the server. So UNC paths start off with double backslashes followed by the server name. In our case, it's CANANT server, or in my case, in your case, it'll be using your username. And if we press enter there, we can see all of the things that are shared out. So if there was printers, we would see the printers here. What we see is managers, that folder that we shared. And then also you may have noticed over here there's a netlogon and a sysvol folder that are part of Active Directory. Those are also publicly available shares. But what we don't see is the C $, the admin $, or the IPC $. Now, with managers, we can go ahead and go in there and we can access those files as if they were on our own computer. Something that we typically do with shares if we're going to use them a lot is we'll come in and add a network location under my computer or this PC, depending on what version of Windows. So a custom network location. We can put in the UNC path, managers, okay. We'll see that that's now been added as a network location down here. Another thing we can do is we can right click on this PC or my computer and click Map Network Drive. So if we wanted to assign a drive letter to our shared folder, we could do that. For instance, let's do M for managers. And then for the folder, we'll do that UNC path. Awesome. So now this is now our M drive, and anything we do in here, we can see it reflected in this folder. For instance, add a folder like Ned stuff. We can come back over here to managers, and we see that that folder has been created. Now, real quick, before we move on to the next exercise, I just want to look at these hidden shares. To illustrate this, let me just log off of this account. And then log in with my other account. So C dollar gives us the C drive on the remote server, on CA-NANCE-server. And then admin $share gives us access to the Windows directory on that server. So if we jump over here, the Windows directory is typically located at the C drive in the Windows folder. You'll notice it's the same thing that we're seeing over here. Alright, so moving on, let's take a look at how we can encrypt the folder. So for exercise 3, we'll look at encrypting. And what we want to do is encrypt that managers folder. Okay, so to do that, let's jump back over here to the C drive in the managers folder. Right click on it. Go to properties. On this general tab, let's go to advanced. Okay, so in here we can choose to compress or encrypt this folder. Let's just do the encrypt, click OK, and then apply. And it's going to ask us, do we want to do it just for this folder, or do we want to do it for the folder and all of the contents? And I think it makes the most sense to do it for all of the contents here. So we'll do that, and then click OK. You'll notice if you click off of highlighting managers that it's now highlighted, or the font color is in green. That indicates to us that this is an encrypted folder. Okay, so nothing special for us. We're able to access the files as if it was unencrypted. But if the machine was shut down and someone were to steal the hard drive, they wouldn't be able to read the contents of this directory because it is encrypted. Alright, and that brings us to exercise 4, which is going to have us back up the certificate that's used to do the encryption here. Alright, so to locate that certificate, what we want to do is go to our certificate manager. We'll access this one through the run command, and the program name is certmgr, so certmanager.msc. So this is one of the MMC snap-ins. You'll see it looks kind of familiar here. From here, we want to look under the personal node and then certificates. We'll see that there is one certificate here that's been issued. It's been issued to me because that's who I'm logged in as. and its purpose is encrypting file systems. So this is the certificate that was used to encrypt this manager's folder. Now, if we want to make a backup of it, we definitely want to make a backup. Why? Because let's say we had to restore the data from this hard drive. If we didn't have the certificate, we wouldn't be able to unencrypt this folder. And so it's very important that we make a backup of this and keep it somewhere safe. So if we right-click on the certificate, we can go to All Tasks and then Export. Well, the important thing that we want to do in this wizard is make sure that we export the private key. Okay, so from there, we can just choose the defaults here. It's good practice to give this a password, okay, so that we can password protect our certificate and private key. And then we can browse and put this somewhere. So I'll put it on the desktop. All right, so the export was successful. Now I can take this certificate right here and move it to somewhere safe, maybe burn it to a disk, put it in a safe or something like that. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is exercise 5, and that's install a printer. So to install a printer, let's go to Start, and then click on Devices and Printers. From there, up in the top left, you'll see there's Add a Device and Add a Printer. So let's click on Add a Printer. Now, you'll see that we can add local or network printers. So choose that option. And we want to add a local printer. So a local printer would be like one that is connected to the machine via USB cord rather than over the network. Okay, so let's choose use the existing port. We're just going to leave this alone. Even though we don't have a printer actually connected to this VM, we can still run through this exercise. Alright, so from there, let's go ahead and pick the right printer. A lot of drivers come already with Windows Server. If we don't have the driver, then we could either get it through Windows Update, or if we have the disk, we could select this option and browse to the location of the driver on the disk. So let's install an HP LaserJet something. It's the 4100 series. Just click Next. Let's call this Office Printer. And then click Next to finish installing it. Alright, so if we wanted to right now, we could go ahead and share out this printer, but we're going to go through that in the next exercise. So let's click Do Not Share This Printer. Next. At this point, if we were actually setting up a printer, we would want to go ahead and print out the test page so that we could see if the printer is actually working. But we can't do that for us, obviously, so we'll click Finish. Okay, so that moves us into exercise 6. In exercise 6, we want to go through sharing the printer. So in the same window, Devices and Printers, if we right-click on this printer, we can go to Printer Properties. Notice that there's also another properties down here, so don't get confused with those two. We want this top one, Printer Properties. And you'll see this window has a lot of tabs. The one that we're interested in is Sharing. So let's click on Sharing. And we want to select the option to change the sharing options. And then click the checkbox for Share This Printer. Sharing name's fine. We'll share this out as Office Printer. Typically, we want to give it some sort of a descriptive name, maybe dealing with the location of the printer or the use case of the printer. And let's also go ahead and list this in the directory. So when we list in the directory, that means that this printer is searchable by other users. When they go to perhaps add a printer to their computer, they'll find this one as a network located printer. Okay, so let's click Apply, and then OK. Great, so now in this window, if we click on the address bar, let's do the UNC path just for our server, like we did before on Windows 10. And we see now that there is a printer here. If I jump, I will also see that printer, and if I wanted to, I could open up that printer. So Windows goes through the process of obtaining that driver for us, and now you'll see that we can access this printer on this machine. So if we go to devices and printers here, we'll see that this Office printer is now available. And I could set this as the default printer and use this for all of my print jobs. Alright, the last thing that we want to look at is managing printer permissions. Sometimes we want to restrict who can use a printer or at what hours they can use the printer. And we would do that with permissions similar to how we set permissions on directories. So to set these permissions, let's jump back over to our Windows server. And let's move back to the Devices and Printers window. And right-click on our printer and go back to Printer Properties. Alright, so you'll see in here we also have a Security tab. And the Security tab has the permissions for all the different users or groups that are allowed to use this printer. So you'll see that by default, everyone has the ability to print. Now, if we didn't want everyone to be able to print to this printer, maybe we just wanted to use it for managers or top-level executives or something like that, we would definitely want to either deny or remove this group entirely. So now only those that are listed with the ability to print are able to do so, and everyone else is not. So once we've made those changes, we can just click Apply and OK. And that brings us to the end of Lab 6. So I hope you guys enjoyed the lab, and as usual, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If not, I'll see you guys next week in the next video. Thank you.